They keep talking about the debris, all this mysterious debris somehow makes the Russian refineries blow up. Obviously, when the main refinery in Moscow was attacked a couple of weeks ago, that's something that everyone in Moscow saw because the plumes of smoke were just covering the sky. And now, it is impacting every single Russian, and it can stop if Ukraine stops these attacks. And all that is needed for that is for Russia to stop targeting Ukrainian cities. The kind of strikes that the capital, Kiev, just saw last night, with more than a dozen killed, probably more because they're still digging out the rubble. But President Putin has ruled this out. He was asked, would you be willing to have this aerial ceasefire, a stop on long-range strikes that would protect Russian refineries over the weekend, and he said no.
This is Times Radio Breakfast with Kate McCann and Stig. Abell. Russia has launched a new wave of attacks on Kyiv, killing at least 10 people overnight. Ukraine's President Zelensky cut short a visit to Dublin to return home after being warned by his intelligence services that strikes were coming. Why would Vladimir Putin step up his action against Ukraine? Well, he's under pressure at home from petrol shortages and Ukraine's increasing success with its own drone attacks on Russian infrastructure. Is there a risk that a cornered Putin will lash out? Yaroslav Trofimov, he's the chief foreign affairs correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, joins us now. Yaroslav, morning to you.
Good morning.
How bad is the situation in Russia when it comes to the economy, and particularly these fuel shortages?
Well, it's the first time since the war began 4.5 years ago that every single ordinary Russian is feeling the impact of the war because they cannot fuel their cars. So there are hours-long lines in Moscow, which is supposed to be better protected. And if you look at the outskirts of Russia, far away, places like Siberia, sometimes people stand in line for 1-2 nights, and they can only get 20, 30 liters of fuel at a time. And throughout Russia, there is a ban on filling in jerry cans. So the crisis is systemic. And for the first time since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia is now forced to start importing gasoline from overseas, India and other places. And that's a result of this Ukrainian drone campaign that has been going on for more than 2 years, but it became much more effective in recent months and resulted in cutting at least 28% of the Russian production capacity of its refineries. And it was just another strike this morning in the city of Kstovo at another major refinery.
So in many ways, the war is coming home to Russia at the moment, and both in terms of how they can fuel themselves. But presumably, do they see images of these strikes from Ukraine where literally drones are striking in the heart of Russia?
Well, some people do see because people have Telegram and other social media accounts, but Russian media usually minimizes all of that. They keep talking about the debris, all this mysterious debris somehow makes the Russian refineries blow up. Obviously, when the main refinery in Moscow was attacked a couple of weeks ago, that's something that everyone in Moscow saw because the plumes of smoke were just covering the sky. And now, it is impacting every single Russian, and it can stop if Ukraine stops these attacks. And all that is needed for that is for Russia to stop targeting Ukrainian cities. The kind of strikes that the capital, Kiev, just saw last night, with more than a dozen killed, probably more because they're still digging out the rubble. But President Putin has ruled this out. He was asked, would you be willing to have this aerial ceasefire, a stop on long-range strikes that would protect Russian refineries over the weekend? And he said no, because we have much more firepower, so it's not in our advantage because we can hit them harder. Well, the result is that the Russians are out of fuel.
And how dangerous is this for Putin now? Because that seems to be the critical question. Many people think that we've talked a lot over the last 4 years of the potential of this wobbling Putin, maybe someone rising up against him. How risky is Putin's situation now, do you think?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because there is no organized form of opposition in Russia, and there is no way for this opposition to coalesce some kind of organized fashion. But let's remember, in Russia, there is a ban on any public meetings, any protests. And yet, every single gas station line is now a protest gathering because people are sitting there for hours and days and complaining about the government. So that's a risk factor. And in Russia, there will be elections to parliament in September. It's a sham election, and yet still it's another occasion to catalyze people's sentiments.
And yet, just finally before you go, there's an argument that if Putin were to somehow be dethroned, and no one quite knows how, there's no guarantee that the person or people who follow him wouldn't be actually worse than him when it comes to their volatility, their willingness to cause mayhem around the world.
Well, yeah, people keep making this argument. I don't think I agree. I think most of the Ukrainians, and for that matter, the Russian opposition also doesn't agree. It is a war that Putin has unleashed for his personal aggrandizement, for his personal ego. It is a war that most of the Russian elite understands is in a dead end. It's cost $1.5 million Russian casualties. It's destroyed the Russian economy, and the Russian front line hasn't moved ahead much in the last 4 years. And so any other person, no matter how hardline, could say, well, look, it's not my war.
Okay.
I can stop it. I can find a pragmatic solution to it.
And before that, could he go wild, Putin, if it becomes more and more desperate? Is there the potential of him unleashing a nuke on Ukraine? Is that a fear that people are having to now calculate?
I think the fear of nukes is always there, but using a tactical nuclear weapon will not really improve the Russian military situation. It's not a classic World War style war with thousands of tanks massing information that could be nuked. And using a strategic nuke to wipe out millions of people, I think that's a line that even Putin will not cross, just because of the backlash it will cause around the world, let alone in Russia itself. And so the path of escalation for him is either to launch a mobilization come September after these elections and try to throw another, several 100,000 people to Ukraine, trying to overrun the front line, or to try to launch some sort of military action against countries in NATO and the European Union, such as the Baltic states, maybe Finland. All of these are very risky scenarios for him, however.
Yeah, to say the very least. It shows you how mobile things still are in this conflict. Yaroslav, really good to speak to you. Thank you for the perspective.
Thank you.
That's Yaroslav Trofimov, the Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent for the Wall Street Journal.